Well, hello, Sophie Chabris. I am so excited to have you today. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. I think you've got a great story to share with our Flourish coaching families. So a little bit of background on you. Sophie, you are a rising senior. You'll be graduating high school in 2021 because I think what you have is so good. People are going to listen to it well beyond, or 2022. That's right. It is 2021 right now. So I think people are going to listen to the advice that you give because it's pretty timely and timeless. And so they'll be listening to it beyond 2022. And you have at that point graduated from high school and you are headed into college at that point. So heading into your senior year, we've been working together one-on-one and we have a lot of fun and you amaze me. So that's why I want you to share your stories. So everybody, I have Sophie with me today to share her story about a really high level extracurricular that not only did she do this extracurricular, but she created it. And I think sometimes, and Sophie, I'm sure you felt like this as you've gone through high school, students will feel like, where do I get involved? What do I do? Or there aren't opportunities. And I think what's so cool about your story is you created your own opportunity, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And so tell us your opportunity that you created from the ground up about a year and a half ago now, is called Corona Care Callers. And why don't you just tell everybody what Corona Care Callers is?
So, Corona Care Callers was a program for our online students who didn't go back this fall in person. It was to reduce the social isolation they were feeling since they had a parent or a family member who had a medical um, problem or situation going on where they weren't allowed to go back to school.
Let's go back in time. It's March 2020, right?
Mhm.
And you're like, there are kids who not only for this school year, so everybody spring of 2020 ended their school year at home.
Mhm.
But then moving forward, because we're in Cincinnati, Ohio, both of us, you knew that while your school might be back in person, there would be kids that didn't get to go at all. Can you tell us just a little bit more about Corona Care Callers? Like, who's delivering a service and who's benefiting from the service? What does that look like?
Yeah, so the high school students at my school were able to participate. Incoming sophomores, incoming juniors, and incoming seniors. We did not include the freshmen this year due to the fact that they had not been at the high school quite yet,
Oh,
and that it was
sure.
going to look a little different than it had in the past, and we wanted them to be part of the program. So the people who are part of the program benefiting from these high school students calling them were kindergartners through freshmen, just to give them a buddy that they can talk to, as well as just some friendly face that they know that they can talk to every week on it, whichever day they meet.
So kindergarten, little ones who never actually even got to start school yet, right?
Yep.
All the way up through ninth graders were
Mhm.
buddied up with a sophomore, junior, or senior.
Yes.
Okay, so it's March. Let's go back again. It's March 2020. What happens like, how did this idea come to your mind?
Yeah, so in March of 2020, I was in a very bad spot personally. I was missing my friends. I'm an extrovert, so I got all of my like happiness and hanging out like all from my friends and peers and teachers and all of that. So not being able to have that in person and not having those connections really took a toll on my mental health. And I realized I'm not the only extrovert at Indian Hill and that people are feeling the exact same way as me, but that I was going to be lucky enough to go back in the fall. So I created this program for the students who are like me that didn't get to go back.
Okay, thank you for being vulnerable and sharing with us because a lot of kids, a lot of adults have felt that isolation, and certainly it took a toll. So you have this idea like, I'm not alone. So I'm so glad you realized you weren't alone and that there was relief for you was going to come sooner than it would for others. And you decide like, we're going to do something about this. So I want you, so you have an idea, and I think a lot of students have ideas, but then they don't know what to do. So can you walk are any students or parents who want to share this with their teen, can you walk them through, as a high school student, what your steps were to get Corona Care Collars off the ground? What's important to be able to do? What do you do from idea in March of 2020 to, well, what was the exact date that it probably launched and you started serving? I don't know that.
Maybe August 1st, because we had to get it ready before school started.
Okay, so from March, middle of March to August 1st, what are the steps that you as a high school student took so that you would be ready for the coming school year?
So the first thing I had to do right off the bat was email my principal. I knew that this was going to be kind of difficult for time for him, just because he had to figure out what we were doing when we got back to school, had to figure out the schedule, all of that, how online classes were going to work. So I emailed him saying I had this idea, how I thought it was going to help benefit students who weren't going to be in school with us.
Mhm.
And once he responded, I got to working on all of my templates and outlines and all the things I think he would need to have before saying yes to the program, just so that it
So did
made.
you do those did you create your templates and outlines and things like that before you even contacted him? Or did you contact him, he had a little bit of interest, and then you went to work?
So I created 3 things before contacting him: the sign up sheets and um, kind of like the whole basis of it, how the volunteers were going to communicate with the parents, the student, and even questions for the student to ask the younger brave. And then I created 2 other things after I contacted him, which were the texting format and the mission statement, so that it was easier to share with him when we were to meet next.
Okay. I love the specificity that you're giving here. Like, I think those are the things, because if you say, oh, I created the PDFs and all the files, and then a student who's having trouble thinking about how in the world would I do this, you being super specific is so incredibly helpful. So really you were making it easy for him to say yes.
Yeah, that was the whole point. I knew it was going to be a hard time for him, um, just solely based on the fact that Corona was happening. So this was me trying to make it as easy as possible for a program to happen and make it easier on him, so that he didn't feel like he was constantly having to reach out or ask me about updates. It was all there ready for him.
I love that. So, my history was 30 years ago. I was a high school teacher. So I taught for 8 years. And I can say anytime, pre-COVID, post-COVID, being a high school teacher, being a high school principal, it's crazy busy. So I would say anytime a student is going to try to initiate something at the high school level, replicating what you did as a very detailed plan. It almost sounds like a business plan that you put together, Sophie, which is fantastic.
Thank you.
And having all the files ready in a shareable format so that it's easy to understand, and it creates little to no work on the ask, because you had to get approval from your principal. Did you have to also get like a sponsor teacher or anything like that? Because I know sometimes that happens.
I did not. My principal actually was my sponsor teacher as well, but I had to also send it out to our, we called it our online liaison, but basically the online principal for this school year. I also had to get her and some of her team to sign off and say that they would be willing to share the information with the parents of students who were going online. So I just sent her the exact same thing I sent my principal, my toolkit with all the questionnaires and questions and all of that to them, so that they had all of these set out documents that were done. And I also attached my principal and his email to me, so that they knew that my principal had already signed off on it.
I love that word you use, toolkit, right? So just think of a toolbox, and you were just putting all these things in there that were the tools to get this running. I think sometimes students have a great idea and they feel like they've got all the time in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You knew that it wasn't going to happen if it weren't ready to go on August 1st of your school year. So that probably helped. I think I would say to students, like, create even a false deadline for yourself, even if it's something that isn't deadline driven. So I'm listening to you talk, and I'm going, you had a whole lot of adult interaction, because I know that not only were you interacting with the online principal and your school principal, but you had to interact with the parents of the younger students. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did.
So there are soft skills involved. So there were some hard skills as far as technical things and things like that. And we're going to refer everybody to your website at the end of our talk. But what would you say are some of the important soft skills that students should be ready to lean on when they're doing something like this? It's going to be innovative, and they're initiating, and they're starting something. And what are those soft skills that grew for you through this experience? Because employers, frankly, they can teach hard skills, but they're looking for people with soft skills.
I think like the biggest soft skill that I realized I needed the most was hardworking. If I hadn't been able to like put the time in before emailing my principal to get those things done, I'm 95% sure this would not have become a thing. He was so overwhelmed. Like when I read his email for the first time, he said, "Thank you so much. I don't have very much time because I have to come up with all these things." It was super helpful to have those already done. Um, and then with that, also knowing that I had to create a few more things before I met with him about 3 days later, knowing that I had to work hard and had to get it done and not procrastinate was a big thing. I think the soft skill that grew the most for me was definitely communication. I'd only done it a little bit with teachers, like if I was out sick one day, like asking them what I missed or if you could email me all the PDF forms. But I had never gone out and emailed back and forth with a principal or with the teacher or even with parents, like whether it was texting the parents asking if they had been contacted by their volunteer or if it was having to actually ask them if they had any ideas on how to make the program better. I had to learn communication, and I learned it in multiple different forms, and I really needed to grow on that section.
Well, it's going to serve you well. Are you comfortable now communicating with adults, or do you still get a little nervous, I guess?
I think there's a little bit of not nerves, but excitement. I am a little bit of like a adrenaline junkie, and so talking to people who aren't my age is a little nerve-wracking, and I kind of live for it. But it's become much easier. I will say the first time I ever talked to a parent on the phone, it was probably one of the scariest moments in this whole thing. I was sitting there hoping not to like fumble my words or say something I didn't mean. I was just kind of like sat there in a little bit of nerves and like a little frozen, formulating the sentences in my head before saying them. Whereas now it kind of comes more naturally. Doesn't mean I don't still formulate them in my head. Still important to think before you speak, but it definitely has become a lot easier and a lot less nerve-wracking.
I'm one of the things that I do for our students who I work with. I'll create like swipe files, which means it's like the verbiage they can use for things, and they can just copy it. As you're saying that, I'm thinking like it probably would be a great practice for somebody who's first time reaching out to adults, just to maybe even write it out or type it up or have a bullet statement list on a post-it note as they're getting ready to call. Okay, so you've had this. I almost feel like you started a business, frankly. I mean, when I listen to you as a business owner myself, have you learned things through this that have helped you think about your future differently? You're in the middle of applying to college and you're creating future goals and you're very forward thinking. So how has your experience made you think of your future college major and maybe ultimately your career differently?
Yeah, so with all of this program in itself, I got a few press emailing me, media emailing me, asking to do interviews.
Okay, I got to interrupt you. She was on the Today Show, everybody. So it started locally, but it went nationally.
Yeah. And I had always wanted to be a public speaker or something that had to do with public speaking. I like to speak. It's not nerve-wracking for me as much as it is for some other students. So just having this constant, not constant, but having these interviews ever so often was great for me. It made me realize that this was something I wanted to do, whether it was going into politics or law or just being like a figure, a figure for other people, talking about important issues that are going on today. It was
Mhm.
really big for me to see that that was something I actually enjoyed doing. And then I also had to market my program to the parents, whether it was emailing or actually creating like a little thing that said like Indian Hill Corona Care Callers program. And I realized that wasn't what I wanted to do, but it was really intriguing to me. Um, so then I took a marketing class my next year at Indian Hill and enjoyed it. And it definitely was something good. I would probably take classes like that in college, but definitely the being able to learn that public speaking was something I wanted to do was super helpful for me.
So that will for sure probably be part of your future, whatever that career ends up looking like. We should tell everybody too, this summer, you invented something last summer. This summer, you have an internship for a mayoral candidate. So, and I would say, it's probably super helpful, all of that experience that you got that summer after your sophomore year to have, to be able to get an internship like this. So hopefully COVID's going to be over. Is Corona Care Callers going to come to an end as COVID comes to an end, or what happens next?
Corona Care Callers will still be a thing. We have something at Indian Hill that kind of targets the freshmen into introducing them to the school, but I would like to target the sophomores. Not only did they not get a real freshman year experience, but as a sophomore myself, I kind of didn't know the upperclassmen well enough to go hang out with them. And all I feel really felt like I knew were the kids in my grade. I want to create this to help them have a closer relationship with the juniors and seniors so that they have a friend in other grades that they can talk to or hang out with if they don't have a friend in their lunch bell.
So it's sort of a almost like a buddy system or a
Yeah.
mentor system, and it's just going to be less. Hopefully, online school will be a thing of the past, and so
Yeah.
but you'll still be helping other students. We should also mention that as you started to get attention for this, that the word spread and you actually replicated this in other communities. So you were willing and generous enough to give everybody, like people in Cincinnati and other school districts and outside of Cincinnati, everything you had to replicate it at their own school. Is that right?
Yes, and thank God I had started off like this whole program launching and all that with a toolkit because I easily just made a copy of it and put it in like for example the Sycamore file or the Reading file and just sent it to the person. I had the surveys and the questions and the text format for parents or email format for the parents all done. So all I had to do was jump on a Zoom with them, explain to them how I added it to my school, how they should add it to theirs. If they had any questions, they asked, and then I would send them on their way with the stuff. And they would just send me an update once the principal okayed it.
So honestly, you probably wouldn't have had the time, the bandwidth to help others get it started had you not had your toolkit, right?
No, I would definitely not have
I
had time.
I know you. I mean, I've known you for over a year, and I know you're a very busy gal, so
Yeah.
that would have been hard. So if we've got somebody sitting here going like, okay, I want to start something, I don't know where to get involved, so I'm going to start something on my own. What would be the advice, the most important piece of advice you would give to another teenager who wants to initiate a program, a club, something in their own high school or community?
I would say my biggest piece of advice would just be if you are creating something from scratch, have as much written down as you can, whether it's the idea of the club or how the club would interact with other people at the school or what activities you want the club to do because you look so much more appealing as a student or as like for example like a product it's so much more appealing to buy a product that has all these benefits written out for you than if you went to go buy a product and there was nothing there that said like, this is just the product. We don't have any benefits of it written down. It is so much easier for the client or the person to just want to take it up and bring it to the school if you have something written down for them that they can show to other people at the school or other members of the staff that they would need to help create this to go on.
That is great. Well, I know people probably want to see what you created, and you're online. So if anybody who's listening to this wants to reach out to you, learn from you, where can they find you?
So we have a website. It's www.coronacarecallers.com. On there, there's multiple different things. All of my interviews are there except for the Today Show. They sadly don't allow us to use their, um,
What?
yeah, sadly they don't allow us to use the link or anything like that. But on there you can contact me. There is a little section that says contact me. Um, so yeah.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing your wisdom, your initiative. Super proud of the impact that you've made, and I know you're going to go far. So thanks, Sophie.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on and so I can help others.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.